Welcome to Little Koi Out of the Frying Pan, Thriving After Trauma. This blog post is titled, Are You Mad at Me? Imagine this. You walk into work and say, Good morning, to the receptionist like usual, but they barely glance in your direction. Your heart sinks and you head to your office, confused about what you might have done to piss them off so badly. They must be mad at you, wishing you all of the dreadfulness in the universe and probably plotting your demise. God, why must you be so annoying and needy? It must be something you said, did, or didn't do, right? Wrong. Turns out they were knee-deep in a project and didn't even hear you come in. It had nothing to do with you. So, who else has had this inner dialogue? I know I have. Now, these thoughts have improved as I work through my trauma in therapy, and while these thoughts come as often as ever, I can rationalize through them quickly and recognize that someone's response is not always about me. Now, if you don't struggle with this kind of anxiety, well then, fuck you. I'm just kidding. Seriously though, if you don't know this kind of anxiety, you most likely know someone who does. I want to share something I read that helped me understand my anxiety about people being mad at me. Being abused can seriously affect your ability to distinguish between not obviously pleased and obviously displeased, because abusers go from neutral to hostile for absolutely no discernible reason. Eventually, you start worrying that everyone is going to be like that. So, you start feeling this urge to make absolutely sure that the people who you actually care about aren't mad or upset because to you, there's no evidence that they're not angry is the same as there's evidence that they are angry. So reading this rang my bell. It made perfect sense. As you have gathered, I grew up in a very volatile home. There was no telling what would set my parents off, especially my mother. I could tell a joke one day, and it'd be the funniest thing she'd ever heard. And I could tell the same joke the next day, and I'd be slapped across the face for being disrespectful. I never knew what kind of parent I would have from moment to moment. Moods would change on a dime, and it was impossible to predict. Walking on eggshells became part of my everyday life. When things were going well at home, even for a few hours, I was always on edge about when the other shoe would drop. It would never be long. I remember crying to my parents one day that I felt scared when things were going well because I was waiting for the dam to break. Going on special outings with my mother was a love-hate event for me. We would always have a great time. She would lavish me with gifts, fancy lunches or dinners, spare no expense, and tell me what a fantastic daughter I was, how godly I was, and how special I was to her. The praise would be layered thick, and of course, I would bask in it. I was starved for it. But as soon as we got home, her mood would instantly change. She would seem to find anything to be upset at me about, whether that was not washing a bowl the correct way, not moving fast enough when I was asked to let the dog out, or forgetting to do a chore before we left for our date. It could be anything. And in turn, she would yell at me about how lazy I was and tell me what a spoiled brat I was. On more than one occasion, she would take away the gift she had bought me earlier that day. Many evenings after a date, I would be ignored because she had already spent the entire afternoon with me. So often I was told, Brielle, Get out of my face. I already spent plenty of time with you today. I suppose I didn't need more love after receiving her love all afternoon. I love spending the time with my mom, but I always feel the aftermath. I lived in an environment that went from neutral to hostile at the drop of a hat. But I didn't know that not everyone was like that. So I spent years dying to myself so people would like me and compromising myself to make people happy. It took me many years to reframe the belief that everyone was mad at me. I would overthink, overanalyze everyone's behavior, tone, or energy shift. And of course, I would think it was because of something I did or said. See, when you've grown up, lived with, or experienced people who become hostile in an instant, of course that's going to mess with your mind. At some point, though, I think we need to realize that not everyone is like that. I've done a lot of work to help overcome this mindset. One very helpful tip I've applied to my life is to think of the scenarios where someone else has asked me if I'm mad at them. Now, typically when someone has asked me if I'm upset with them, it has nothing to do with them. The usual response is, "Oh, no, I'm not upset at all. I've just been deep in thought about XYZ. I'm so sorry if I came across upset with you." The majority of the time, I'm not upset with anyone. Now think about the time if someone had asked you if you're upset with them. How have you responded? Were you upset with them? Most likely, you were distracted by something and your energy shift had nothing to do with being upset with them or anything to do with them. Another significant factor in overcoming this mindset is becoming surrounded by people I trust will tell me when and if they're upset with me. I know that if Jason is upset with me, he will tell me directly. If my kids are mad at me, well, that's pretty easy to tell. And if my boss is upset about something I've done, I know she will tell me. But who am I kidding? I'm perfect. Yeah, just kidding. I don't leave room for guessing games in my relationships anymore. Instead, I have cultivated extraordinary friendships where we can be honest with each other if one is upset. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have this anxiety, but I just don't let it rule my day. I don't pine in misery wondering if someone is mad at me. Instead, I can typically let it go and trust that no one is upset at me. Many factors play into someone's shift in response. For example, I am a very enthusiastic texter. I use all of the emojis and exclamation points and try to convey a lot of positive tones in my text. Unless I am really mad. But even then, I still use emojis because, come on, I'm not a monster. But what about the times I'm in a meeting and can't respond as lively as usual, or I'm on a tight deadline and can't converse like normal? While these are very simplistic examples, they still convey realities of our lives that may cause a change in our communication style at the moment, but honestly have nothing to do with being upset with anyone. Usually I find, if I wait patiently enough, the reason for the shift in energy outs itself. Actually, last week I had an instance where I wondered if someone was mad at me, although there was no obvious reason. So we had talks for a few days, exchanging memes, funny TikToks, and lighthearted jokes, and the next day her responses were very short. Okay, and sure. Now, enthusiastic texters, you know what I'm talking about when someone suddenly starts replying like that. However, in my heart, I knew this wasn't about me, so I let it rest for a few days. Then, sure enough, she texts and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad this fiscal year is over. I was so swamped these last few days." See? Nothing to do with me. Now, did I rack my brain trying to think of something I did? Absolutely. Did I scroll through all of our texts multiple times to find a reason why she might have turned quiet? You betcha. But did I allow it to rule my mind for days on end? No. Why? Because I worked hard to reframe my mind and learn that not everything is about me. This person is not my abuser. I'm living a different life now, a life of safety, stability, and security of having people around me who are not explosive. So next time you worry about someone being mad at you, take a breath. You're safe. It's not normal for people to go from neutral to hostile without warning, without reason. If you're dealing with people who cause you this kind of anxiety, it might be time to rethink their presence in your life. I know that resetting your mindset is hard work, and honestly, our worries may or may never totally leave us. But there are tools to help us not allow anxiety to rule our day or lives. I've got you. We're in this together. Thank you so much for reading, and I'm going to read that quote again that I read at the front of my blog. It's a little bit hard to convey reading it out loud. It makes more sense when I read it in my head. But I'm going to go ahead and read that again, and anyway. Okay, here we go. Being abused can seriously affect your ability to distinguish between not obviously pleased and obviously displeased, because abusers go from neutral to hostile for absolutely no discernible reason. And eventually, you start worrying that everyone is going to be like that, and you start feeling this urge to make absolutely sure that the people who actually care about you aren't mad or upset, because to you, there's no evidence that they're not angry. It's the same as there's evidence that they are angry. Anyway, I hope that made sense, and thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.